Hi, I'm Meta, and I'm a landscape architect that is also doing programming. So, let me tell you something about landscape architecture. Actually, we design open space, apart from architecture that designs buildings. And we usually make the before picture a beautiful after picture. And we use this, we do this with using 3D models, precise, exact 3D models of existing terrain. And these models help us stay on budget, as well as help the contractor and the investor to know what they're going to get out of it. So in the design process, we use different 3D programs like AutoCAD, ArchiCAD, Maya, Rhino. Probably most of them you've never heard, but if you have, kudos to you. So basically what we do to make these models is we get the initial terrain or the initial data from surveyors that go into the field, take a whole bunch of points, and make a plan, a map, that looks like this. A couple of lines, we call them contour lines, that tell the height, and about 1,000 points per project that should end up looking like this. This is just a model of the terrain, the previous one that you saw. Unfortunately, we usually get data that looks like this. These spikes, these anomalies, are data that has no height value. And the height value is the most important thing when it comes to 3D modeling. So, what I did, is make a CSV file from AutoCAD and correct it. Delete everything that you see here in purple because that's just white noise that makes the file for AutoCAD unreadable. So you can do this by hand. It takes about 3 hours and you make a bunch of mistakes. Or you can write a program. You can write code, which I did, and named it GeoMesh. It's sort of a working title. But that basically filtered out all the unuseful data that I had that made a pretty nice 3D model. So, GeoMesh is live. It's on Heroku. It's very easy to use. You just upload a CSV file, press submit, and you get a download file with, tells you how much data you lost. So you can like correct it or ask the surveyor to give you more data, or maybe you're happy with it and you don't spend 3 hours on it, and it lets you focus on the stuff that really, really matters, on the design. So, and of course, it's written in Python, and the framework for the app is Django, but it helps you make these pretty pictures, these pretty designs. And I would be really, really grateful if anybody knows any Rhino developers or is a Rhino developer to help me out, because I really want this app to be more applicable than just to me, because currently I'm the only one that's using it. So, thanks.
And she did.
Hello. Some of you maybe will participate at the Django Girls event next Saturday. And here's a spoiler alert. In the last chapter of that tutorial, it's explained how to implement forms in Django. And there, the first paragraph starts with the following statement. The final thing we want to do on our website is create a nice way to add and edit blog posts. Django's admin is cool, but it's rather hard to customize and make pretty. But isn't it a pity that Django doesn't support all the nice features which have been added to modern browsers, and instead still relies on pure HTTP response request cycles? The Django Girls tutorial then shows how to start with the model for our blog posts. Note that I've added 2 extra fields to that model. Tags, which is a many-to-many field used to classify our blog posts. An image, which optionally can be used to upload an image. Starting from this model, we create a Django form. And with that form, we create a Django view. And then we render that view using a template. And finally, we connect everything together by routing the URLs to those views. Now, if we load our blog application and start to add a new post, as we expect, Django renders a form editor for us. What we see here are the 4 input fields reflecting the fields we have defined in our model. The first is an input field, followed by a text area. The third field is a multiple select box. The default widget from a user experience view is really awful. The last field is used to upload an image. Here we also experience a bad usability because there's no preview, and if the submitted form does not validate, we have to resend the complete payload again. But there are other issues with this approach. According to the Bootstrap documentation, fields should be grouped and special CSS classes shall be applied to each field and label. To achieve this in Django, you must first edit the form template and rewrite field by field. But we don't want to repeat ourselves. Fortunately, since Django 4.0, we can override the class form renderer, which can handle this for us. In my workshop, I will show how to do that not only for Bootstrap, but for other CSS frameworks such as Tailwind, Bulma, Foundation, or your own style guide. In a real-world application, the approach described in the Django Girls tutorial is not contemporary anymore. The typical solution would be to use one of the many JavaScript frameworks, for instance, React or Vue.js. This, however, separates parts of the business logic between the browser and the server. But we can achieve the same result by wrapping our form into a web component. We then get all the benefits, such as immediate form validation, jumping to the first invalid field, user-friendly select fields to edit many-to-many relations, file uploads with preview, buttons to give feedback on submission success or failure. This all can be done with minimal changes to the existing code base used in the Django Girls tutorial. My workshop is based on that tutorial, and I will show how to implement asynchronous file uploading and select fields with lazy lookups, but without having to specify extra endpoints. Create collection of forms, nest collections into each other, create expandable lists of form collections, adding animation and actions to the form buttons, client-side form validation without writing JavaScript, hiding form fields and field sets depending on the current context, using various CSS frameworks. In summary, you can bring the functionality of the Django admin to the front end with the user experience of modern JavaScript frameworks, but with the simplicity of Django's well-established model-to-form-to-view approach. If you want to learn more, feel free to attend my workshop tomorrow at 11:15.
Thank you so much. Inside of the time. Thank you, Jacob. Looking forward for the workshop tomorrow. Let's go to the next one.
All right. Hello, everyone. Yeah, excited to be here. I want to say a couple of words about Django and how Colo can help you debug it, and to promote the workshop, which I'm doing at 4 p.m. on Friday. So Colo is a novel Django debugger that helps you see every variable, every function call, and every SQL query in your in every request script or test. And that's my only slide, actually, because I want to live demo some stuff with you. So hopefully the live demo gods are with us today. So let's see how this works. So actually, for these purposes, I want us to imagine that we're a new developer on a Django code base. And in this case, we're working on the Simple Poll Slack app. And we've received our first ticket, which is that whenever someone votes on a poll, like I'm doing now, you should receive a "you voted" message back in Slack. Now, this doesn't really make sense as a feature because there's other ways to represent that, but I just want to make sure, or I just want to go through that use case with you. So if I'm a completely new developer to the code base, I don't really know where I can add this new feature. So I might have a look through the file browser. Or I might search for this string, and then I can work my way back from that file to where I might want to add my new feature to send that message to the user who just voted. But with Colo, what you can do actually is you can see all the recently served requests right in your editor here. So I just clicked on this button here to vote, and a new request showed up. Or if I click a button here, you'll see a new request will show up. And then as soon as we have this request or this trace recorded, we can actually see a visualization of everything that happened during our request. So every node in this visualization is a function call in white or a SQL query in purple. Background jobs are in green, and then we have some outbound HTTP requests as well in blue. And then as this new developer on this new project, I can then actually go in and explore a little bit. So without any knowledge of the code base, I can see that there's a few sort of big nodes with a lot of logic hanging off them, and I can see what the functions are, and I can actually click on them and jump straight to the code. So it's pretty apparent in this visualization that this vote function seems to be coordinating a lot of the work, and sure enough, we did cast a vote in Simple Poll in Slack. And yes, this function is actually a great place to add this feature if we actually wanted to do that. So without knowing anything about the code base, I can just make a request as a new developer, or as many of us do all the time when we explore an unfamiliar part of a code base we might have even worked on for a long time, I can just get an overview of kind of everything that's happening and then dig in later. So that's some of the basic functionality that Colo provides. So you can jump straight to each function call. You can also see the local variables and the values for them for each, as they were during the request. So in this case, this best user ID returned this value. And I can actually click on this and see all of the local variables. In this case, they're all actually input arguments for this vote function. I can see all of the variables throughout the body of the function, and then I can see the return value as well. In this case, it's an HTTP response. I can also see SQL queries, jump to them, and then jump to exactly where in my code they were actually called. So this is using Colo in an HTTP request, but as of lately, we've actually added a few new features. So I want to show two of them for you. So this first one, I'm actually going to jump into the shell. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So we're in a shell here, and I'm going to import a few things, and also set up a config. So by default, Colo just shows you the user code, so code that exists exists in your project and that you wrote, or that someone on your team wrote, not library code. But we can tell it to actually include all of the hard work that Django is doing for you as well. And then we can enable Colo with a context manager. And I'm just going to do one thing here, which is make a simple get query. So it's just a single select query. And that way we'll see everything that Django is actually doing for us so all the hard work that Django is putting in as it executes this get query. So it's doing 700 different frames. So this is everything that Django is doing for us when it makes a SQL query. So if you attended the talk earlier about what Django does to build up a query, some of these file names and function names might be familiar to you here. And we can actually see that most of the time is spent on actually setting up a connection. So if we try and do this very same thing again, we should see a different value. So we see the same thing happened again, but now it's just 400 frames. And we can actually compare these two.
It's over.
Nice.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's go to the next one. Philip.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm Manuel. I'm from Argentina. My mother tongue is Spanish, and I do care about documentation. So this talk is about that. I mean, the combination of those things, basically, another language that is not English and documentation. I got inspired by the Goyo talk about maintainers and collaborators and contributors that are not just code, right? So there are a lot of ways of contribute to a project, and I would say maybe 3 years ago, more or less, we started this project of translating all the official Python documentation into Spanish And it was an amazing project, and I wanted to share some of the tips or some of the things that we learned and why it succeed. We don't really know exactly why it succeed because I've been translating documentation, I don't know, maybe 7 years more or less, but this is the first time that I participate in a project that it did work, and we have 100% translated the Python documentation into Spanish right now. So we are super happy with that, and I wanted to share some of the things that we have done and that we think that because of that, it worked, right? So it took us like a year to complete the project, and we saw that there are other people, other teams trying to do the same, but they had a lot of problems, and they never completed the translation of the documentation. So maybe it can help other projects or other communities to do the same. We thought that a good idea to encourage people to collaborate in the project was to give them something in exchange, right? So we are asking for their team, for the time, because maybe they are like professional translator or because they are developer that understand Python and understand English and Spanish. But we were like, okay, you contribute to this project and we are not giving nothing in exchange. So we started like creating some guides about how to use Git and why it's important to contribute in an open source project, right? How it could be useful for other aspects of your life, basically. How you can do your first pull request, and all these small things, but we were like mentoring them and encouraging them to learn something that is probably not on their field, right? Because if we have people that were like sociologists, chemistry, translators, right? That they don't really need Git or Python or any of this stuff. So our idea was to share something that they could use in another way, right? We had a lot of problems at the beginning trying to discuss or agreed in what was the specific localization. Spanish is super big, and there is Latin American Spanish, Argentinian Spanish, Mexican, Spain. So we all use like different words. It's the same language, but they're all different words. And so we try to lower down the barrier and tell them to translate the whole module in the way that they feel like comfortable with, right? So we try to not push them to write like in Spanish from Spain, specifically through the whole module, but the Spanish that they use like day to day. So it's easier for them to write the documentation in the language and in the way that they feel more comfortable, right? So that reduces a lot of work because we stopped like discussing what was the best word for this particular translation, right? But then we realized that in another module we use a different word for that because that was more colloquial in the Spanish, in Spanish from Spain, but it was like different in Spanish from Argentina. So we thought that if it was everything, the same word was used across the whole module, that was fine. So we assign it tasks a module by person, right? So all the module has consistency along it. Another thing that we did was like give people like immediately after the first PR was merged or the second one, give them like admin permission to everything, right? So we try to mentor them immediately when they feel comfortable to them mentor other people that were also onboarding. If they already know how to use Git or how to create a pull request, how to use the desktop application that we use to translate the pod file, they can start mentoring other people, right? So we give them admin permission to the repository. We make them like feel more comfortable, more involved with the project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, so my name is Philip and I came to you from Python Aware team in Anaconda, and I wanted to invite you to some pair programming. Why I want to, I'm not having a workshop to advertise today as the people before, but we have sprints on Saturday and Sunday, so maybe sprints a good opportunity for pair programming. and I want to tell you why it might be a good opportunity. So Kent Beck wrote once that all the code that we put into production should be written in pair. And you might consider that statement a little bit extreme, but when you look at the book when he wrote it, it's a book about extreme programming, so you may expect extreme measures. So, what I want to tell you is based on my first-hand experience, and only on my first-hand experience. I did no research on pair programming. There is some academic research on pair programming, but you know, it's often based on experiments on students, and it's not what we do. So, extreme programming is what we are doing in our Python and our team. So what I'm going to tell is based on that experience. So there are some pros and cons on pair programming, but we won't be talking about cons because it's a lightning talk. We don't have time. So no code reviews. That's an important part of what we are doing. There are no code reviews because, there is no need for code reviews. On the other hand, you may tell that you are doing code review all the time when you are doing pair programming. So we have two pairs of eyes looking at the code all the time, and it's easier to spot problems with two pairs of eyes. And there is also a conversation aspect because pair programming is not only about writing code, it's about talking about what you are writing. So more or less that's what we are doing while we are doing pair programming. There is also aspect of knowledge transfer. We transfer knowledge about the language we are using, about the frameworks we are using, and about small tricks that every programmer has, like some keyboard shortcut that he's using and the other person doesn't know that something is possible to. So there are also many owners of the code, and that means that if the ticket or issue is big enough to take more than one day, we rotate pairs, and there are multiple people working on the same issue day after day, and then you have multiple owners of the code. So on Saturday and Sunday we have sprints, so I would be very happy to do some pair programming with someone during the sprints. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So yeah, PyJamasCon, so it's a conference that's coming up in November. What's the difference between PyJamasCon and the other conference is that we are very lazy. So basically, why I know about PyJamasCon in the first place is that, we have all been there. We wake up very early in the morning for the conference. Even though we may have traveled like the night before, we haven't slept for 24 hours, etc., etc., we still have to wake up and go to the conference and have coffee there. And it's so tiring sometimes. And I wonder whether we can actually have a conference that you don't need any coffee because you can just have it in your bed, right? So this is the idea of PyJamasCon. So this is how it became in the last 2 years. So we have this online conference that runs for 24 hours. So no matter where you are, if you're from the other part of the world, you can still join. So it will be 24 hours marathon-ish kind of streaming. It's going to be like a pajamas party because we did actually have a pajamas competition 2 years ago, online, of course. So you can stay in your bed. Like some people ask me sometimes, right? Like, do you have to wear pajamas at PyJamasCon? So if your pajamas is a conference t-shirt, you're welcome to wear any conference t-shirt that you got here or maybe in the last conference. So yeah, I can show you. Oh, if I can. Hello? Oh, yeah. So this is actually some people who actually were wearing pajamas during pajamas, and they take a selfie and then just join the competition. It's really fun. So you're welcome to do that. You can learn something about Python, or just, listen to some interesting talk, or give a talk in pajamas. And also, very exciting thing, we also have these, this year we try something out that we welcome proposal from any languages. We already have some Spanish submission, but we still haven't get any Portuguese submission yet. So we try to be multilingual. I have my friend Lais, who is from Brazil, so she translates that for me. And yeah, so that's really great. So we have just extended the CFP submission deadline. It's your last chance. I don't think we'll extend it anymore, because otherwise there will be no conference talk. So last chance, if you want to speak in your language, either it's Portuguese, Spanish, or whatever, or English, actually, then please submit. We may need your help to add the subtitle there if you're speaking in another language, but we have some AI tool that will give it to you, so you don't have to do the translation, everything by yourself. So yeah, that's it for now. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So my talk is about some work we've done recently, well, in my company, to make some improvements to Django migrations for Postgres functions and triggers. So I work at Bohus, we're a software platform which allows users to do searches over companies and sort of the infrastructure around that, so funders, and get information on companies in the UK. So I don't know if you lot have a lot of history of Django migrations. I actually remember a time when there wasn't a built-in migration system, and we used like South and other stuff. But eventually, we built migrations into Django. And some of the same issues now I feel come up when we deal with Postgres functions, which is what we do a lot in Bohus. So here we have an example of one of my PRs, and I just wanted a one-line change, but because there's no built-in system to manage change management, we have the system of delete the old file, then have a superseded error, and then create a new file with the new SQL for that function, which obviously isn't very good, because now, with our new system, you can see exactly what lines change, and it's very easy to do PRs. So how did we get this migrations? And then, obviously, you run make migrations, and it will do the actual hard bit. So with Django migrations, the migration system is actually really good. So the way it works is it has a project state and a model state, and it runs each migration operation in turn to modify the project state and the model state, and it looks at your actual models file, and it compares the two, gives it to the migration auto detector, and that knows, okay, to turn from this project state to this project state, I need to create an operation for add model, create model, or delete model. And we want to extend that to now just say, move from this model state to this model state, create function. So quite simple the whole system's quite good, so change some of the existing Django code to now use our new project state that understands what a function is and use that instead. There are some issues that come with this. Normally you'd want to put triggers and functions next to each other. So indexes we already have on models, but you don't have triggers. But you can't actually add triggers to the meta. You have to, I think most people add like a new meta file. This has been open for 14 years, I think 15 years now, so hopefully it'll be fixing. So here I have to do an extended meta just to add the triggers. And it's quite hard to put the right functions in this right place, but we deal with that. And this is like hard-coded project state, which is not that nice because I want to use my new project state that understands what functions are. so I have to do a bit of an ugly patch. So hopefully Django will continue to work on more stuff so this can be a bit easier. But if this sort of interests you, some of the deep stuff we do in Django, we're hiring at Bowhurst. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Elliot.
Hello. So I'm going to talk to you about the DjangoProject.com search function that I rebuilt a few years ago, and I'm trying to maintain until today. I'm Paolo Mecchiore, I'm the CTO of 20Tab. I'm a software engineer, Python developer, and Django contributor. And this is a photo of me at EuroPython 2017 in Rimini. I give my first talk about full text search. It was new in Django 1.10, and I found out very easily in the Django documentation, and I tried to learn more about this subject because it was very interesting for me. And after I presented this talk in various conferences, and then I wrote an article about it, and I received a lot of interesting feedback about that. And I started thinking to how was implemented the search function in the DjangoProject.com website. And I found out that it relies on external search engine, so I decided to propose an implementation based on the Django itself. And I organized a Django sprint in the EuroPython 2017. So with a group of people, we made a proof of concept of this functionality, removing totally the search engine, the external search engine. And then I worked to make a complete pull request, and late that year, team helped me to complete this pull request, and we merged. And so in 2017, we started using Django itself to the Django search functionality. Since then, I implemented various functionalities, and last 2 years ago, I opened this issue in the Django in GitHub to take track of new functionalities we can have we can implement it in the Django search functionality. And we upgraded Django 3.2 to have web search highlighting functionality in it. We updated to Postgres 12 to have more languages supported. One of the last we supported last few minutes ago was Indonesian. So now you can read DjangoCon documentation in Indonesian and search for it. And another one was the web search functionalities from Postgres 12. So now you can search like that using Boolean logic, removing word you don't want to search for. Is only an example. And this is pretty new, a few minutes ago. And we are trying to do a lot of work improving this functionality, and I thank Marius and Carton to help us to deploy these new functionalities and to have feedbacks. And we have new feature we want to implement. There are people that are opening issue. For example, Adam opened this issue to promote and update also the front part of the search. And I'm here to ask you to try to use the Django search functionality. Don't complain with colleagues only, but open an issue if something didn't work. Try to help us to review pull requests that people are opening, and help us if you can try to translate things and improve a lot this functionality. And this is my contacts. If you are interested in the subject of full text search and want to help improve this functionality also in the DjangoProject.com website, I'm happy to be contacted with you. We can chat here or next day online. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Rethinking about Django SSR. What I mean, in my firm, we work really hard with Vue.js. Who use Vue.js in together with Django? Yeah, of course. Probably you know pains about this work. Yeah. My name is Maxim Danilov. I work with Django some time, and we start to work with Vue in 2021, and we use version Vue.js 2.7. Thank you for my team who helped me create this presentation and who test all my crazy ideas in own life. Okay, if we create some project, if we create some project which use Vue.js, we have this structure. We have on front end Vue.js. After that, Vue.js asks server, and server asks Node.js, or server asks Django, and Node.js asks Django with Truth Django REST framework, for example, and we receive some answer to browser, and on the client it should be all generated. Who use this structure in own work? Probably, yeah. And after that, we think what we should to do. This all works slowly. And after that, we start to use cache. We start to use cache in browser. We start to use cache on the web server, image cache. We start to use async fetch on the Node.js. We use API cache, and we start to cache something on the Django, in Django functions. But it works slowly. What we can do? After that, we start to create a new layer for our cache. We can refactor components in Vue.js. We can use magic settings in the web browser. We can refactor our APIs or refactor our serializer. Probably we start to use fast API in our project, and on Django we start to use defer only, select related, prefetch related for query sets. We start to change settings in Node.js, but it works slowly. Who knows this problem? All work slowly, probably. Yeah. What we can to do? And sometimes comes to us somebody and say, you should use SSR. Who knows this word? But I mean something others. We can to use static site rendering, not server-side rendering. Okay, how it works with SSR? For first request, browser asks our web server goes to Node, Node asks Django REST API, Django REST framework asks Django, and after that answer and rendered template came to the browser. It works faster for first request, and after that on the browser comes heterodation, and we receive a complete app on our browser. It works. But something interesting here. On the other request, after the first request, we don't need Node.js anymore. It's interesting. What we can do? Probably we can avoid. Can we avoid to use Node.js? Not, we cannot avoid. But we can avoid to use Node.js for production. How? Probably, we can use Django side rendering for first request. But we have a team from Vue.js developers who create for us template. And idea was, yeah.
We just, Maxim, your time, Maxim. Thank you so much.
Last sentence, please. Node.js right now, before production, generate for Django templates. And after that, Django used these templates for first answer. We don't use Node.js anymore in our production for first request. That's all.
Thank you, Maxim.